Are you tired of dating women who drain your energy, manipulate your emotions, and leave you questioning your own sanity? The problem isn't that good women don't exist, it's that you don't know how to identify them using the timeless principles of power and human nature. Machiavelli understood something that modern men have forgotten. Choosing the wrong woman is like appointing the wrong advisor to your court. It can destroy everything you've worked to build. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal his 5 strategic principles for identifying women of true virtue versus those who wear masks of deception. Every man believes he sees clearly when he is in love. Yet, according to Niccolò Machiavelli, that is the precise moment when he sees nothing at all. Passion, he warned, blinds judgment more effectively than fear, ambition, or even hatred. For when a man's heart burns with desire, his mind becomes the servant of his longing. And in that blindness, he mistakes illusion for virtue and beauty for character. Machiavelli understood that men are not ruined by love itself, but by their inability to see through it. He observed rulers who trusted courtesans, princes who surrendered kingdoms for affection, and soldiers who betrayed their own cause for a fleeting embrace. Each believed their feeling was proof of truth. Each was deceived. Passion, to Machiavelli, was not a sign of strength. It was a test of discipline. He wrote that the wise man must learn to view others not as they appear in moments of charm or beauty, but as they behave when there is nothing to gain. A woman's smile, her words, even her affection. These are tools, not truths. They must be examined as a statesman examines a treaty with skepticism, patience, and foresight. For if a treaty is signed in haste, it may bring a war, and if a man gives his heart without understanding, he signs away his peace. This is why Machiavelli taught that perception is the highest weapon a man can possess. To perceive clearly means to see the difference between emotion and reality, between appearance and intention. He advised that just as a ruler must study the nature of men before granting them power, so too must a man study the nature of a woman before granting her influence over his heart. Desire wants to believe. Perception demands to know, and those two are often at war within a man. Machiavelli would say, the greatest mistake of men is to trust their feelings when their interests are at stake. A man guided by emotion becomes predictable, and predictability invites manipulation. He saw this pattern not only in politics, but in human nature itself. The lover, like the ruler, becomes vulnerable when he allows his longing to overrule his logic. And so, to choose wisely, a man must train his sight beyond beauty. He must ask, what lies behind her affection? Is it admiration or ambition? Does her loyalty remain when her comfort is disturbed? Or does she retreat when the world no longer flatters her? Machiavelli believed that most men never ask these questions because they are too eager to feel desired. But the man who seeks to understand rather than be understood holds the advantage. A woman who dazzles your eyes may not deserve your faith. A woman who pleases your heart may not respect your vision. But a woman who can stand before you without pretense, who speaks truth even when it offends, who values principle above pleasure, that woman is worth the weight of loyalty. Yet even then, Machiavelli would remind us, judgment must remain sharper than affection, for perception is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. To see clearly is to love wisely, and to love wisely, one must first master the art of not being deceived by one's own desire. Machiavelli once observed that a ruler's greatest test is not in conquering enemies, but in choosing allies who will not destroy him from within. The same truth, he would say, applies to a man choosing a woman, for while beauty may capture attention, it is character that determines destiny. And in this choice, most men are reckless. They examine everything except what truly matters: the woman's nature, her principles, her strength in adversity. Machiavelli would call this blindness a political failure of the heart, because every relationship, no matter how romantic, is also an alliance. and alliances that are formed out of impulse rather than calculation eventually collapse under the weight of reality. A man who does not understand the nature of his companion builds his future on unstable ground. He warned that a woman who cannot govern her own emotions will one day turn her chaos upon you. A partner whose loyalty depends on comfort will abandon you when fortune turns against you. And a woman who flatters your ego instead of challenging your flaws will make you weaker, not wiser. For Machiavelli, the purpose of union was not constant pleasure. It was endurance, stability, and shared power. He believed that the character of a woman should be studied as carefully as the laws of a foreign land. Observe her not when she is adored, but when she is denied what she wants. Watch how she speaks of others when they are not present. Listen to what she values when no one is watching. These moments reveal more about her than any confession of love. In her restraint, you see her strength. In her reaction, you see her truth. Machiavelli would remind men that the same qualities that make a ruler wise, patience, observation, control, must guide the heart as well. Choosing a woman without these is like appointing a minister without knowing his loyalty. Sooner or later, your empire suffers. He saw that men who fall for charm without testing character end up serving the very women they hoped to lead. Their lives become dictated by moods and emotions they do not understand. The power they once held over themselves is surrendered in silence. And once a man gives up that power, he becomes governed by another's instability. Character, to Machiavelli, was the only true measure of value. He would rather a man stand beside a woman of modest appearance but unshakable principles than one of dazzling beauty and shifting loyalties. For the first strengthens a man's rule over himself, while the second drains it from within. He would say that a wise man studies his companion as he studies an enemy. Not to distrust her, but to understand her nature before he gives her power. Because when you choose a woman, you choose a reflection of your future. Her decisions, her temperament, her discipline, these will either fortify your purpose or corrode it silently. And so, Machiavelli would advise a woman's beauty may please your senses, but her character determines whether you will rise or fall beside her. Machiavelli believed that human nature is the one constant in a world that forever changes. Kings may rise and fall, fortunes may shift, but the nature of a person, their true self beneath words, appearances, and gestures, remains the same. And it was this truth he applied not only to politics, but to every bond that holds power over a man's life, including love. For the choice of a woman, he would say, is not a test of luck, but of perception, a test of how well a man can see what others refuse to see. He warned that most men are deceived not because women hide their nature, but because men refuse to observe it. They are too eager to believe in the story they have written in their minds. They confuse attention with affection, passion with loyalty, and beauty with virtue. But to Machiavelli, there was only one reliable method to understand a person: the test of small things. He wrote that the behavior of an ally in trivial matters reveals what they will do in matters of great consequence. The same, he would say, is true in love. A man should not wait for a great betrayal to learn a woman's loyalty. He should study how she treats those who can offer her nothing. He should notice how she speaks when she is angry, how she acts when plans fall apart, how she responds when life denies her desire. For if her nature falters in the smallest discomforts, it will collapse entirely in great misfortune. Machiavelli understood that people rarely act differently under pressure. They simply become more visible. The fire of circumstance burns away the mask, and what remains is the truth of a person's character. And so, he advised that the wise man does not rush to judgment by appearance or by passion. He tests, not through deceit, but through patience. He allows time to reveal what desire tries to hide. He would say, "Fortune may deceive, but nature does not. A woman who is kind only when praised, who is loyal only when loved, who is calm only when in control. Her nature is a mirror of instability, and a man who cannot read this will mistake her charm for goodness. Machiavelli saw that the most dangerous alliances, whether political or romantic, are those built on the illusion of harmony. For what appears calm today may turn to conflict tomorrow if the foundation was never real. Testing nature is not manipulation, it is wisdom. The same way a prince tests his generals before war, a man must test his partner before devotion. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. Observe how she speaks of her past, how she treats her family, how she responds to limits. Each reaction is a clue, each silence a confession. In these details lie her truth, her values, her potential for loyalty. Machiavelli believed that no woman can conceal her nature forever, just as no ruler can disguise his weakness indefinitely. Time exposes all, but only the patient man will see it before the damage is done. To know someone's nature is to see the future of your relationship with them. And once you understand it, you no longer love blindly. You choose with power. Machiavelli never worshipped weakness, not in rulers, not in men, and certainly not in the women who shared their lives. To him, power was not arrogance. It was stability, control, and awareness of one's influence. A weak partner, he believed, could undo even the strongest man, not through malice but through fragility. Because weakness demands protection, and constant protection drains strength. In his eyes, the woman beside a man must not merely please him, she must fortify him. He understood that power in love is not domination, but balance. Just as a prince cannot rule a kingdom surrounded by flatterers and cowards, a man cannot thrive beside a woman who obedience without thought. Blind obedience, Machiavelli would say, is as dangerous as rebellion, for it hides truth beneath silence. A woman who never challenges you cannot truly support you, because she does not sharpen your mind or test your reason. She lets you believe in illusions, and illusions are the death of power. He would remind men that strength attracts strength. A ruler who surrounds himself with the weak invites destruction. The same law governs the heart. When a man chooses a woman, he should seek not submission but alignment. A union where both possess the discipline to control their emotions and the courage to speak truth, even when it wounds. For Machiavelli knew that comfort breeds decay. Only through friction does loyalty prove its worth. He studied the courts of Europe and saw how rulers were undone by their lovers' whispers, by women who used affection as influence and tears as tools. But he also saw others, queens, wives, courtesans, whose intelligence matched their lovers' ambition, whose composure elevated their power. These women, he noted, were feared and respected not because they obeyed, but because they understood. They knew when to yield and when to stand firm. They were partners, not ornaments. A weak woman, he wrote, mirrors a weak state, full of noise, empty of order. She cannot bear conflict, and so she avoids truth. She cannot stand alone, and so she clings. Her presence drains rather than empowers. And the man who mistakes her dependence for devotion becomes trapped in a subtle slavery. One that begins with tenderness, but ends with exhaustion. Power between man and woman, Machiavelli believed, should be mutual and intelligent. Each should hold authority in their domain, and each should command the respect of the other. A man who demands blind submission seeks not love but control, and control born from fear always collapses. Yet a woman who seeks to dominate a man destroys the balance that sustains desire. There is no peace in constant struggle for power, nor dignity in perpetual obedience. Machiavelli would urge men to look for the rare kind of woman who wields her strength with grace, the one who can match your ambition without resenting it, who can disagree without dishonoring you, who can stand firm when the world wavers. She is not loud, but she is immovable. She does not compete for control. She commands respect through wisdom. To choose her is to fortify your own authority, for her stability becomes your foundation. He would remind us that power is not something you take from another, It is something you share with those who are worthy to hold it. And if your partner's strength threatens you, it is not her power you fear, it is your own insecurity. For only the man who has mastered himself can stand beside a powerful woman and remain unshaken. Politics of the soul, a negotiation between two powers that could either build a lasting alliance or lead to quiet ruin. He understood that every bond between man and woman, no matter how intimate, carries within it the same dynamics that rule empires: ambition, trust, loyalty, control, and fear. Where the poets wrote about passion, Machiavelli wrote about consequences. He would say that men who treat love as emotion alone become subjects of their own desires. They are ruled by impulse, by reaction, by the need to be adored. But those who approach love with wisdom, who study its nature, who understand its power, become rulers even within intimacy. They do not love less deeply, they love more intelligently. They see that affection is not enough. A union that cannot survive reality, that collapses when fortune shifts, was never love. It was fantasy. For Machiavelli, the art of choosing a woman was not about sentiment, but about foresight. He compared it to forming an alliance with another state. Before joining forces, a prince studies the other ruler's history, strengths, and motives. He asks, does this alliance strengthen my realm or make it vulnerable? The same question, he would argue, must guide a man's heart. For love that weakens your discipline, distracts your ambition, or clouds your reason is not a blessing. It is a threat disguised as pleasure. He warned that affection without balance turns into dependency. When one partner gives everything while the other offers little, power shifts, and love becomes servitude. A wise man, therefore, keeps affection and self-command in equal measure. He can give his heart, but never surrender his crown, because the moment a man's happiness depends entirely on another, he no longer rules his life. He becomes a vassal to emotion. Machiavelli saw that true love, like stable governance, demands strategy. It requires honesty, discipline, and boundaries. It thrives not on endless romance, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. Two strong minds moving in the same direction. That was his idea of union. He admired women who possessed vision, who understood the weight of loyalty, who valued peace over drama and stability over flattery. For he knew that such a woman was not merely a companion, but a fortress, one who could defend his soul when fortune turned against him. He wrote that those who mistake passion for permanence build their future on fire. The flame consumes quickly, leaving only ashes where wisdom should have stood. But when love is guided by understanding, when both man and woman treat their bond as something to govern rather than indulge, it becomes a source of power. A ruler with a wise consort is twice as strong, for he rules not only with his mind, but with a heart disciplined by reason. To Machiavelli, love and politics were not opposites, they were mirrors. Both demand perception, restraint, and courage to face uncomfortable truths. He saw that a man who cannot manage his emotions cannot manage his affairs, and a woman who cannot master her impulses cannot share his throne. Love, when chosen wisely, becomes the most powerful alliance a man can form. It amplifies his purpose, steadies his ambition, and turns his private life into a reflection of his empire. Machiavelli never wrote a book on love, yet his wisdom exposes the truth most men never dare to see. That the heart is a kingdom, and whoever you choose to share it with will determine whether it prospers or falls. In his eyes, desire was not the enemy, but blindness was. For the man who cannot see clearly in love will repeat the same errors that destroy nations, trusting too quickly, yielding too easily, and ruling without understanding. He taught that perception must guide passion, that character is strategy, that the testing of nature reveals truth, that strength seeks strength, and that love, when ruled with wisdom, becomes the greatest alliance a man can form. These were not lessons in romance. They were lessons in mastery. The mastery of self, the discipline of choice, and the courage to love without surrendering power. Every man who studies Machiavelli's words is invited to look not only outward at the world, but inward at his own heart. To ask, do I rule my desires, or do they rule me? For love is not an escape from power, it is its reflection, and the man who learns to govern love as he governs his life will never be destroyed by either.